Greetings, fellow painters! Today we're looking at a step-by-step process for layering paints on your board game miniatures using the paints that you already own. We'll demonstrate this by painting up a sun-soaked barbarian using a simple skin tone recipe consisting of just 3 paints. No hacks, no cheats, no speed painting tricks here. This is simply an easy-to-replicate approach to layering paint on your favorite tabletop characters. Welcome to Trehane Miniatures. As of late, there seems to be a trend aimed at layer painting, where paint companies have begun marketing their paints as triad systems. This has been made popular by paint brands, such as Duncan Rhodes Too Thin Coats line, where their marketing specifically states that their line is designed as triads. More recently, the Army Painter has gotten into the mix with its Warpaint Fanatic line that features what it calls a flexible triad system, though it should probably be more accurately referred to as a hexad system since it does contain groups of 6 colors. The idea is that the triad groups begin with the shadow color, followed by a midtone color, and then a highlight. Personally, I find the Too Thin Coats triads are grouped a little close together in value for the way that I like to paint, where I go from near black shadows to near white highlights. But Mr. Rhodes is a far superior painter than I am, so I'm not going to argue with the man. Some of the Army Painter hexads are grouped pretty close in value as well, but many have a much wider range of value. I personally think that they're knocking it out of the park with their skin tone hexads. While this may be a convenient way for companies to sell more paint, while this may be a convenient way for new painters to feel confident that they're layering with the correct groups of colors, it can also be a pretty darn expensive way to outfit your paint supply if you're purchasing 3 separate paints for every color that you want. This extra cost is especially noticeable when compared to speed painting methods that use a simple black and white underpainting followed by a single translucent paint that acts as a shade, midtone, and highlight in one coat. Fortunately, you do not have to purchase a whole bunch of new paints to start enjoying painting with layers. Not only do you not need to use triads for your layering, you don't even need to use similar hues for the layering process. We have videos demonstrating painting a red cape using only 1 red paint mixed with green and a light green. We have another video where we paint a similar red cape, but this time mix the same red paint with a blue for a slightly different result. I'll link to both of these at the end of the video. Even though in this video we're demonstrating layering with skin tones, please do not get too hung up on the specific colors being used here. This is not a skin tone specific video, this is a general approach to layering paints on miniatures. If you have purple, pink, and yellow for your skin tones, use those. They'll work just fine. The main principle we're using is to start with 3 paints, 1 very dark, 1 very light, and 1 midtone color, which is typically the color that you want your surface to appear as. When moving from a darker color to a lighter color, we mix each new color with the previous color at about a 50-50 ratio before moving on to using the color on its own. This means that we'll be mixing colors twice. We'll mix the dark color with the midtone color to create a secondary shadow color, and we'll mix the midtone color with the light color to create our first highlight layer. That's it. The 3 specific colors that I'm using for this barbarian skin are whole red, orange brown, and ice yellow. But again, don't worry too much about the exact colors since we're primarily covering the general approach to layering. I'm starting with 2 thin coats of whole red. On my little demo disc here, I'll try to keep the shadow area at the top of the frame, and I'm not going to cover that small shadow area with the second coat of whole red. I'm basically treating the disc as if it's one muscle, say a pectoral, on the character for this demonstration. Starting from a black primer, the first coat of the deep shadow color covers all of the surface area that you're painting. Every layer of paint is thinned a bit with water to the consistency shown on the palette. It should flow off the brush nicely and not leave noticeable brush strokes. Because acrylic paints are inherently somewhat translucent, this first coat will dry quite dark, and this will be the deepest shadow color for the piece. When layering with lighter paints, a good habit to get into is to draw your strokes beginning in the dark area and finishing at a point of the feature that will be the brightest. This is because more paint will naturally be deposited at the end of the stroke, which results in a higher opacity and ultimately a brighter color. When applying a second layer of whole red, I avoid painting this into the deep recesses that are at the bottom of any muscle. However, the center line recess of the chest, stomach, and back will continue to receive highlight coats. The second color that we're using is a 50-50 mix of the dark shadow color and the mid-tone color. In this case, it's Hull Red and Orange Brown by Vallejo. I continue to draw my strokes from near the darkest part of each feature, which on this disc is at the top of the frame, and continue the stroke all the way through to the point that will be the brightest highlight. On muscular figures like this barbarian, I highlight all the way up to the top of each muscle where it meets the deepest shadow point of the muscle above it. I think it looks more natural with the brightest highlight at the top of the muscle and not necessarily at the point of the muscle that sticks out the farthest. I'm using 2 coats of each color that I layer, applying each color over 2 thin passes covering a little less area with each subsequent coat allows for a smooth transition between layers without the need for glazing. Next, we apply the pure mid-tone color Orange Brown, following the same approach, applying the paint in 2 thin layers covering a little less area with each layer. This may seem like a lengthy process when spelled out step by step in a video like this, but it's really not. From this point forward, we're covering such a small amount of surface area that things move along rather quickly. Plus, we're never concerned with achieving completely opaque layers of paint like we would with styles of painting that begin with solid base coats of every color. We just lay down 2 thin layers of each new color and move on. I'm not saying that this competes with any speed painting methods out there, but it's definitely not as daunting as some painters make it out to be. Now we're in the home stretch with our first highlight color consisting of Orange Brown and Ice Yellow. While demonstrating this on the disc, I continue using the exact same application method that I've used up till now, where I draw the paint with long continuous strokes. On the actual model, however, I'm painting with a series of short strokes and little dots. The area that we're covering is very small, so I don't want any obvious brush strokes showing. Plus, adding highlight colors in this way makes it appear that the light is interacting with the surface of the skin in a more interesting way. It is still important that you move the paint towards the brighter areas and terminate your strokes there. Wherever you end your stroke will end up appearing slightly brighter. Finally, we apply our brightest highlights with pure Ice Yellow. These highlights are focused almost solely on the upper torso and face. The paint is dotted in to accentuate the most prominent features only. For this piece, I want the light source to appear that it's coming from the barbarian's upper right side, so I'm doing very little layering on the left side of the character's face, back, and his left arm. Hopefully, now that the skin is all finished, you can see how the layering process can be used to create dynamically lit features that really make your models pop. I quickly painted up the rest of the model so you can see how this looks as part of a finished product. I tried to keep the clothing darker so that the skin and the axe were the only standout focal points. Let me know what you think. Is this worth the effort? Thank you so much for watching. Please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel to join our growing community of painters.